Tahir Leonard asks, how could black people unite their funds in a super PAC like the Jewish community does?
Oh, they can do the same thing that Jews do. Black folk are just as qualified and have as much opportunity to set up super PACs as Jews do. But you got to use the same strategy, the same goals. Jews set up theirs around their greatest commonality. The greatest commonality is two things. One is that they belong to the Caucasian race, and secondly, that they ascribe to the Judeo religion, period. And so they build everything around that. It is strictly to promote their self-interest, to protect their religion. Blacks have to do the same thing. But blacks will have to say that we're going to set up a super PAC to be able to fund things, but it has to be based on what? On being black and elevating black and black interests. You cannot go there talking about, I'm going to have a super PAC, but I'm going to save poor people, midgets, humpbacks, gays, everybody in the world. And black folk have to identify with their greatest commonalities. Their greatest commonality is one, is being black, and two, being the product of centuries of slavery and Jim Crow segregation, and need to advance their people. That's what their super PAC must focus on. Elevating my people, putting our group's self-interest first and foremost for any other group, just like the Jews put the Jewish religion and their people before any other group and any other religion.
Okay, and the second question comes from Melanie Payne. Did you think working in politics gave you a head start on being in business?
Not really. It gave me some indications, some possibilities, because I got a greater exposure to businesses and business opportunities. But what we have to understand is that economics must always come before politics. You can't just simply go into politics and then try to go into economics. It won't work, especially for a black person. You'll wind up in trouble. You get into the criminal roles. See, most whites, if you were to go right now to most elected offices in the United States, probably about 95 to 96% of all whites holding elected office are extremely wealthy people. They went in as conservatives, which means they got what they want already. They went into politics to use politics to hold on to it and preserve it. That's the point of politics. Politics is designed to protect and hold on and protect businesses and wealth for those who got it. See, black folk go into politics without any wealth and without any money. They want to go in there doing what? First and foremost, to get a job and to get their picture taken and get some kind of visibility, and then hopefully figure out a way they can make money after they get in office. And then 9 times out of 10, they get caught trying to use their public office to get money, and they wind up going to jail. So first, remember always, politics comes second to economics. And money comes to you first, then you use that money to use politics to protect that money. That's why black folk don't have any money. They don't have money, and they should get it before they go into politics.
Chapter 15, The Shape of Things to Come, a Master Plan. It has been previously stated in substance that although the African people may continue their present course of weakness on into the future with thousands of ununified organizations, powerless and therefore forever dependent like half men and half women, unable to use their own brains. Although this tragic situation may continue into an uncertain future, we say it can never be said again that such a hopeless situation persists because no member of the race or group has ever studied the principal problems and the obstacles to their solutions based on history, and then offered an overall plan as one of the possible lines of march out of the morass. For there have been a number of plans, the weakness of some that is instead of being presented as a proposal, a point of beginning for the express purpose of making such revisions or amendments as the people think best. They are too often presented authoritatively as fait accompli, a reflection of the leader's ego, infallible wisdom, and power. In this section are the specifics of a master plan. It is to be the functioning work of a unifying race organization of a kind never presented to the black race before. To make all of this crystal clear, what is meant by race organization, how it would differ from anything attempted before, and what should be some of its guiding principles and understandings are enumerated below. For emphasis, a few of the most important propositions are necessary recapitulations of points already presented in preceding pages. The main focus here is on blacks in the United States because whether they know it or not, they are in the very best situation to be the lead-off example for the whole African world. And so, number one proposition is race organization. Here, a nationwide organization of blacks only. but it means much more. The organization should be so structured through all elements of the Black population and on an active membership so vast that it would go far beyond the accepted scientific criteria for determining the wishes of a whole people. In other words, the first objective would be to have a representative scheme of organization that would beyond all doubt be a voice of Black America, and to keep this an actual fact by periodic polls as crucial issues affecting the race as a group arise. No such organization has ever existed among us. Hence, no real unity existed among us. Proposition number 2, far from being a separatist movement, as these terms are generally understood, the organization would be cooperative in the fullest and most humane meaning of the word. For the Black masses are not going to give up their 400 years of investment in America, 400 years of investments in blood and labor to build up its present great wealth. They are not about to separate, migrate anywhere, leaving all these centuries of toil as a free gift to the whites. This means that we shall continue to battle for equal employment and advancement throughout the United States and in every area of the nation's life. The expansion of voting and elections to public office, and in general, the exercise without exceptions of all the rights and duties of other citizens. This also represents our conviction that the Black masses will not be seriously influenced by the pipe dream of a separate, independent nation or republic within the territorial confines of the United States. They have too much common sense for that and would reject such movements in sheer self-defense, even if the whites withdrew and turned over 5 southern states for such a purpose. Negro integrationalists would oppose this, of course, but for an obviously quite different reason. Their drive is to break up existing Black communities and scatter the Black people among hostile whites. A great nationwide organization of Blacks, therefore, would be in the only possible position to cooperate and work out common problems with whites as equals. And this is from a position backed by organized power, the only position respected at this stage of human development. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, and continuing my reading of Chancellor Williams' great book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. This is the final chapter we're reading, chapter 15, right? The master plan, right? The shape of things to come, the master plan, starting on page 361. And so you see the clip from Dr. Claude Anderson talking about the economic aspect of it. But overall, we're talking about the unification of Black people in America. Is it even possible? Is it even feasible? Is it a pipe dream? Are we just blowing smoke? Do Black people really care enough en masse? Do enough Black people en masse really care enough for us to actually unite and build some kind of structure, some kind of organization that would benefit us behind enemy lines? Now, Chancellor Williams said something that goes against one of the things that I've been saying, and he was talking about the building of a Black nation within America. And let's say the idea is we get 2, 3 to 5 states and we're able to build our Black nation within America. I mean, I do agree with him that white people would never allow us to do that. White people would never just say, here is land, build your nation, and become a powerful people right up under our nose. And we give you the resources, or we at least give you the land to do it. I do agree with him that white people would never do that. We did a breakdown on that. And when the gentleman was talking about moving to the South, and I'm not against the idea, but I just don't believe that white people would just say, here's land, go do your thing, because if so, they would have been done it, right? So I do agree with Chancellor Williams on that the white people wouldn't just stand by and allow us to do it. I do, however, wish that we come up with something that would allow us to empower ourselves en masse, because at the current rate we're going, our future would probably be the Native Americans in America, right? That will probably be our future if we don't get it together. as of right now, we're operating so individualistically that being able to put together anything that could unite us in mass seems so far-fetched. We've heard stories, we've seen videos and all type of news stories about small pockets of Black people coming together, buying land, building communities and all those things. And that's what we should be doing. But we have to find a way to do that all over the nation and connect together. And that's what Chancellor Williams is talking about, the organizations, the being organized throughout the nation, but it's still working within that framework of that code of conduct that we create for ourselves. So that's what we're getting into. So I'm picking up on the third proposition. This is page 363, the third proposition. It was stated above that we would continue to push for equal employment and political opportunities on all fronts. The sadly missing link, however, is that we ourselves have done little to create employment opportunities. If we say that as a race, we are too poor to engage in productive activities that would create thousands of jobs for our young people. If we continue traditional pleas of poverty for our total spending of $42 to $50 billion each year rises up to call us liars. We are able. Those who wish to engage in private enterprise for their own personal benefit will always be free to do so. And there will always be some pride in putting out this or that rich Black capitalist. When we consider the welfare of the whole community, however, we are getting back to a basic African ideology, which is that the welfare of the people as a whole takes priority over that of the individual. The organization will be a national community made up of the numerous Black communities. In demanding rights, it will also assume the racist responsibility for creating some of the opportunities itself. The most crucial point to be considered and remember is the vast difference between what the Blacks do as a race from the viewpoint of the world opinion and what the Black individual does, right? Proposition number 4, not unity just for unity, but unity for great achievements, not one of which can be realized without it. The first great understanding should be that the unity we seek cannot be achieved by organization alone. Even an organization of several million members will have no lasting basis for existing unless the total membership is mutually and individually involved in activities which each feels is important and will be directly beneficial to him in all his own lifetime. Direct membership by families may turn out to be more important than one based on a federation of existing organizations, right? Actual unity will be achieved not by preaching, pleading, or exhortations, but almost unconsciously as people work together for mutual benefits to each other and the advancement of the race as a whole. Meaningful, practical activities which involve even children in attacking the problems of their race will be the cement which we call unity. So working together for a common goal for us all that benefits us all, a win-win situation for everybody, not just concentrating on building your own pockets, right? The second great understanding should be that economic activities are so fundamental in any true upward movement, so clearly indispensable at this stage in history. It should be unnecessary to state it even. The still existing slave mentality causes millions of us to shy away from this basis of life itself because it requires more initiative, training, and work, and less talk than politics. Consequently, the overall picture we present to the world is that of a race of dependent job seekers, ourselves unable to engage in the large-scale production of any of the necessities of life, whether they are the shoes and the clothing we wear or the food we eat. We don't produce any of it, and that's the problem. Hence, the billions of dollars we spend each year just in these categories, we eagerly give back to the whites to strengthen their power over us while becoming richer and richer at the same time. And we do it with a smile. We spend our money with white people, give white people our money, give up our economic power, and think that it's powerful to give up your money. Economic development activities are direct survival activities, the means of existing, helping to provide the means of existence. It is a It is as simple as that. The main goals of a great unity movement can never be reached unless the organization has its own self-generating financial resources to protect, defend, and promote the interests of the race. Organizations which must be subsidized by government and foundation grants to exist are not in an independent position. Organizations which must be subsidized by government and foundation grants to exist are not in an independent position, still depending on them. The third understanding should be clear that all community enterprises, contrary to capitalism, will be owned and operated by the people in the community, that they will be the shareholders, that all the trained personnel in each store, plant, or any other enterprise will be the shareholders, and therefore part owners of such establishments, that all profits will belong to the people, but full responsibility for the first-class services, efficiency, and general business management will be that of the elected managers and not the general membership. Finally, the scope and nature of the proposed divisions in the last section of this work will doubtless make even clearer the real significance of a nationwide organization. For in addition to the work involved in raising not just the hopes, but the level of life of those lower down, equally important will be what this massive consolidation of united power can do in the following areas. And we're about to get to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consolidations, and I'm just going to read parts of the consolidations. So the first consolidation is and let me set it up again. For in addition to the work involved in raising not just the hopes, but the level of life of those lower down, equally important will be what is this massive consolidation of unused power can do in the following areas. So what this unused power can do in this area. So area number 1 is unused power can influence American foreign policy and actions in regard to crucial matters affecting African nations just as effectively as American Jews can influence this country's relations with Israel. And as another example, it could stop the use of millions of black taxpayer dollars to help Portugal suppress the freedom fighters of its African empire. If a deaf ear is turned to such protest, several million blacks could pledge to withhold the payment of taxes until all armed assistance for the war against Africans cease, something a disunited people are hopeless to do now. This would be real Pan-Africanism. And he's right. We have no power to affect anything inside of America or outside. The second is an overall race organization can deal more effectively with some important problems at home more effectively than any smaller independent group can do nationwide. The higher rents and higher prices paid for goods and services in inner cities than those paid in the affluent white suburbs. This open yet solid war against the blacks is being accepted because we are helplessly disorganized. The third is it can carry on a nationwide education program directly into the homes, reversing the poor and deprived homes negative outlook to a positive one. Heading the information agenda would be a focus on those death-dealing diseases which impair both mind and body in the diseased wombs of the mothers. The widest information should be given on the fact that ignorance and indifference to personal health can result in children being born mentally and physically handicapped, and thus handicapped for life, not just by genetic preconditions, but by the actions of their parents, right? 4, it can oversee the welfare of the race by maintaining a check on the existing blacks are secretly used exclusively as guinea pigs in dangerous experiments by various medical projects. Neither the Tuskegee experiments nor the number of our people who needlessly suffered and died from them must be passed over as an unusual or isolated incident. The many years the government and the doctors were able to keep this particular secret should be a matter of grave concern. It is also important to know to what extent Negro physicians participated in such experiments. For of course, no one should be asked to believe that such experiments could be carried on blacks only in such large numbers and over such a long period without any black doctors knowing about them. Such a race movement would be superficial indeed if it proceeded without its principal foundation, which is the ownership of vast tracts of farm and timberland on various parts of the country. The current ideological cry, we must have land, is valid only if we answer the question, for what purpose or to what end, right? Land should be for a more abundant life. Carry on a large-scale production program such as cattle ranches for beef, hog farms for pork products, turkey farms for poultry and eggs, vegetables and all kinds, corn, wheat, etc. Us growing for us, having our own, using land properly, not just having land just to have land, right? Number 6, it can have on behalf of the race, it represents a central national bank as one people's national depository and central financing agency, a national auditing and accounting service, a general insurance system covering especially those categories where blacks are arbitrarily denied protection or are charged much higher rates than those paid by whites. Home improvement, building, and small loans could all be handled by community credit unions or organized on a somewhat different basis than existing credit unions. Number 7, it can give new hope and a new sense of direction to the thousands behind prison walls, and in time, practically empty the prisons of those convicted of crimes for which the whites go free. The important thing, however, is that the youth, men and women coming out of prisons will have something to come to, training or retraining for their much needed service and helping to build and advance themselves as they build and advance their race. And number 8, the great change in outlook and the new inspiration that would come to black children and youth are immeasurable. Just to know that their parents are engaged in and actively a part of a great movement will give a new sense of worth and dignity. No longer will it be necessary to shout in unison, I am somebody. For the children of janitors, trash haulers, maids, and parents in similar occupations, their children will regard them with pride and in a new light. We are great if we are an active part of a great movement. Up to now, black children have been badly cheated. They have never had the inspiring reasons to study and advance, which are constantly before the eyes of white children. And this central fact of difference has led me to suppose that some providential favor must have enabled the black students of the world to do so well in the face of it all. Finally, and obviously, 1, none of the above can be achieved on a nationwide scale without a nationwide movement of several million members organized as a race, working as a race for its interests as full-fledged American citizens. And it comes down to us actually giving a damn to do so. We have to liberate our minds. And that's the next part that we get into, right? Because all the plans sound great, but we have to have it here first in our minds, in our hearts, and in our souls. And right now, we don't have it there. Enough of us don't have it there. Enough of us don't care. Enough of us are still in the matrix. Not enough of us even know that the red pill exists. So it starts with us having a new program inserted into our minds. And that's how we go to how to begin and by whom. In this section titled The Liberation of Our Minds, the various factors which explain the generally dependent disposition of African people today were outlined in some detail. They reveal the tragic extent to which a dominant group can shape and control even the thinking of the suppressed group. This meant that unlike other peoples, the black vulnerability remained mentally enslaved even after their physical emancipation. That Caucasianization of the blacks was so well done over the many centuries that it is doubtful if real liberation of our minds will be achieved in this generation or even this generation. Because he's talking about the 60s and 70s back then, and even in the 80s, right? Yet the black youth in the 1960s brought about the greatest reversal of the racist attitude toward itself that had ever been achieved before. There is therefore no grounds for despair and much ground for faith if we understand that total liberation will be slow, even with the best efforts, and that there will always be those who have the white viewpoint on race and will never abandon it. This cannot stop the onward march of the whole people to human equality and dignity. But who will begin to lay the first stone in the foundation of the greatest movement for racial unity and power that ever undertaken. And how might such a task begin? Some of us who would otherwise be naturally expected to lead off have already spent so many years in studying the history of the crisis and analyzing the problems that we are now near the end of our journey and must pass the undertaking to those more able to carry on. This, like every great movement, will be initiated by just one individual. No great gathering or crowd starts a movement. Quite the contrary. When the many assemble, it is because someone has already begun. One person has already thought matters through and resolved that a beginning must be made. He should not be the usual leader whose fiery denunciations of wrongs against the blacks may be counted on to stir emotions, and that is all. The one person needed is simply one who is dedicated with a sense of mission for his race, seeking nothing but the opportunity to serve it. There are doubtless countless thousands of such sons and daughters of the race willing and ready, but either not knowing what to do or afraid of their own capabilities and leave it to somebody else. Yet, all one person has to do is to ask 5 or 6 people to study the plan and then meet later to discuss it. Just 5 or 6 persons, not one of whom needs to be a big name. This small initial group of 6 could have each member become a committee of 1. Each one nominate 3 other people to study the plan before the next meeting, at which the time the 18 members could become the nucleus of a general organizing committee. Further nominations of the organizing committee should be the representative of all groups, students, laborers, clerks, etc., as well as professionals. The representatives of the organization committee may be from national organizations. They have to be all black, or smaller organizations, lodges, clubs, etc., right? This core committee, after a series of meetings during which the master plan has been studied in detail and revisions or amendments have been proposed for future action, could be proceeded to develop and carry out plans for the formation of a national organizing committee composed of representatives from various sections of the country. Note that even at the outset of organizing, some funds will be required if effective work is to be done. The work on the National Organizing Committee would be crucial. It would have to, and now these are 11 points of the work of the National Organizing Committee. So the first one is to summarize the main features of the plan and outline them in the simplest terms for publication, distribution, and broadcast to the Black world. Number 2, determine ways and means of funding the organizing procedures. 3, determine the best general membership enrollment procedures, such as moving state by state, seeing 1-year membership goal for each state instead of attempting to organize throughout the nation all at once. 4, divide each state into districts, each with an organizing committee with the chairman, the same divisional scheme for towns and cities, each section having a committee and chairman. 5, draw heavily on young people who really started the movement and who should therefore be a more powerful force in carrying it on. 6, conduct in advance a nationwide poll to determine A, how many Black people in America desire the proposed overall organization of the race, and B, how many agree to participate in its activity. 7, clarify the scheme of organization to emphasize the individuality of membership, i.e. an association or union, etc., may join as such, but its main role would be setting the example for its members who may or may not wish to join. The organization will have its own membership card, and each of its members who joined will have his or own membership card. In the case of organizing by families, the most significant invitation, each family would have a family membership card, and each member of the family from age 5 on will have his or own membership card. Number 8, set the national membership goals as 2-year plans, 3-year plans, 5-year plans, etc. Number 9, determine time and place for the first General Assembly for the formal ratification and launching of action programming. 10, have information and publicly committee maintain various media to keep constantly before the people the plans, purposes, and goals of the movement, who is doing what, and the progress being made. 11, propose annual awards to individuals and groups that have been outstanding in their work for racial unity through organized action, right? So Everything in this final chapter then is a guideline for thinking and rethinking about how to deal with the situation in which we live. The plan itself is a proposal. Revisions and amendments will be proposals, all tentative until approval by the people. The functioning organization will be under the overall administration of a National Council of Leaders, headed by a national chairman following traditional patterns of African council leaders. Each state, city, or community division would also be organized under councils of leaders. The organizational structure of the movement should be by major divisions of the major activities, each divided into departments for carrying on their respective programs. Special study and analysis should be given to each division and each department coming under it, for there could be no better way to understand the scope and significance of what is presented here. This should be easy for all because I have not been dealing with idealistic, unattainable dreams or mere academic theories, but very practical day-to-day problems. In doing so, I have deliberately avoided the academic and often esoteric language of scholarship, right? And so now we're going to get into what he's giving the structure by divisions. And so I'm going to give you a bit, just pieces of this because it's a lot, it's long. And I want you to read it for yourself, though. But just pieces of it, give you enough for you to understand what he's talking about, right? So, structures by divisions. The first is the Division of Economic Planning and Development. The Division of Economic Planning and Development should be the foundation of the organized efforts and the principal source of support and promotion of the most important activities of the whole race. A guiding principle should be that all promoted committee enterprises shall be cooperatively owned and controlled by the people and the community, and that each enterprise be under highly trained management and competent service personnel. And under that, you will have a Department of Promotion of Community Cooperative Enterprises, the Department of Finance, Banking, and Credit Unions, the Institute of Technology and Personnel Training, Central Office of Accounting and Finance Control, Department of Land Reclamation and Farming, Transport and Distribution Agency, and the General Purchasing and Supply Agency. The second is the Division of Political Action, and that is to promote and assist voter registration, provide profile of candidates, local and state and national, prepare bills and other measures affecting the group for state legislators and U.S. Congress. For liaison with White House, all actions can be taken through the political process to promote, protect the welfare of Black Americans. The third is the Division of Public Education, to achieve a higher standard of teaching and student achievement on every level involved in the education of Black children and youth, and to develop a better system of general adult education in all Black communities, right? And so this would include a foundation for direct research, a general publishing board, a committee of voters, so every committee of school visitors should be elected by the people of the community and should report directly to them. But education here means far more than school education. It means spreading light through a comprehensive program into the deprived areas of the community. New standards for better health, better homes and gardens, neighborhood improvement activities, and sponsoring neighborhood conferences and questions of mutual community and educational interest. A division of education would justify its existence if it did nothing more than conduct studies as a basis for proposing certain guidelines for the race in the United States. The general confusion and mess up in the Black Studies movement, for example, could have been avoided if the young people had had somewhere to turn for help in determining procedures and priorities. What united guiding forces was there to advise them that all fields could not possibly or sensibly be started at once, and there were neither a fraction of the trained teachers or required for suitable books or other needs teaching and learning materials. Only 3 or 4 courses could have been profitably started while research and training prepared the way for a real educational experience and others to be started later. Even then, common sense would have been dictated that Black studies can only be carried on in certain schools by certain teachers. To force them into white schools only because they are integrating, and find it an expedient policy for the movement is one of those Black illusions of achievement and still leads us astray. Equally ridiculous is the assumption that unwilling and uncommitted white and Negro teachers are going to now deal fairly with the very aspects of civilization which they have systematically excluded from instruction all along. If this were not the case, of course, there would be no such phenomenon today as Black studies. All right, so now number 4 is the Division of Community Service. That will have a Department of Health and Sanitation. And then there's a Division of Youth Activities, and this is to assume leadership roles in all areas and undertakings for which they are capable. Students and non-students should join hands in race-building efforts. One of their precious responsibilities should be the Department of Children Affairs, which in their division, the underlying idea here is to have specific and important roles for all children and youth. And then there's the Division of Pan-African Affairs. This division would maintain direct contacts and the closest relationships with the people and states of Black America, the Caribbean, and the other Black population centers around the world. The purposes would be specific. 1, to keep them fully informed of what we are doing and how. 2, to learn from what they are doing and how. 3, find out what the obstacles are in each Black area, including our own, and to counsel together on ways and means of overcoming the seemingly impossible. 4, to explore. 4, and then actually determine definite ways for mutual existence. When this is done, we will have moved from the case of Pan-African talk to the work of Pan-African in action. 5, trade in the exchange of goods and services, scientific and technological knowledge, right? All right, so then there's going to be a Division of Intelligence and Security. This division would maintain highly trained intelligence agents to 1, check internal subversion activities of agents placed within organizations by others. 2, secure complete records of all persons employed by or connected with the organization. 3, promote formation of training of self-protection units everywhere to defend the community against unlawful and unjust raids and other forms of murderous attacks should they occur. This simply means preparedness for defense against attacks by well-known and well-organized citizens, primarily groups. And then there's the Commission for Spiritual Life and Assistance. This should be the race's greatest commission. Its major task would be 1, to determine the direction of civilization. 2, to interpret the spiritual as a men and women working on the highest level of human endeavors to understand the meaning of life or trying to improve it. 3, enlist the cooperation of white, brown, yellow, red, and any other and all peoples of goodwill in an all-out drive for a better world. 4, maintain an emergency assistance program for families or communities in distress. 5, and to assume the initiative in seeking the active cooperation of any and all religious faiths and all institutions which are concerned with improving human relations and therefore life itself. And then there's ideology and guidelines, right? So with the development of a movement of this magnitude, Black people may begin to learn at last how utterly futile it is to grasp at their own ideologies developed by the white world. For the people of this white world, they, the Black leaders of a still leaderless yet hopeful people, have been and still are expecting the solution of the racist problems to be handed to them on the silver platters of either capitalism or communism. Elements of both of these systems prevailed in Africa several thousand years before either capitalism or Marxism was born in the West. Black people generally could not be expected to know this because, unlike other peoples, they have been completely cut off from their past history and therefore are ignorant of their own philosophy of life, ancient religion, institutions which were borrowed by others. What the need now, therefore, is neither Black capitalism or Black communism, both of which benefit those at the top and exploit the masses. But what is needed is the ideology of Black Africanism, operating within the framework of the traditional African philosophy of life and the best of its value system. And then he gets into guidelines. And so giving us these guidelines, and I'm just going to briefly go through these guidelines. So the guidelines, The movement will seek to achieve the largest possible measure of unity in order to form the power base of the organized voice of the Black people in a particular region or nation, to develop from this position of strength the much needed economic enterprises that will not only create employment opportunities, but being owned directly by the people in the community will lower the cost and raise the standard of living for all. You see, Dr. Anderson talked about it, and even Chancellor Williams is talking about it. One of the first things we have to do is build our economic base. Then there's financing. There will be a general membership fee. Each community enterprise will be financed initially by the purchase of shares of participating owners. Each share would be at a purchase price in reach of the poorest. Indeed, a special program for shareholding by children should be an important part of the movement. Administration. The organization will be based upon the traditional African constitutional system. There will be no authoritarian presidents or heads. As in traditional Africa, the king or chief was the spokesman of the previously expressed will of the people and the instrument for carrying out that will. The national head or heads of the organization and the head of every unit, therefore, will function in like manner, issuing no important orders or public statements on behalf of the organizing or the race will it represent without consent of the council. Then there's the organization will modernize the ancient African Council of Elders only to the extent of changing elders to leaders in order to admit outstanding young people to membership. The biggest officer on each level is the chairman of the council. In traditional Africa, this would be the king or the chief, who could neither vote nor actively participate in the discussions, since his principal duty was to proclaim and execute the will of the people as it had been determined by their representatives on the council. The fourth one is to enable the people of the community to have an intelligent or an informed opinion about matters of importance. The principal role of leaders is to study and to institute studies upon the basis of which plans are developed and proposals are submitted to the general membership. Number 5, all officers, even though elected for a specific term of years, should be subject to removal for cause at any time by the people. Number 6, the organization itself will be one vast union, and no outside organization or union will be allowed to determine its policies, programs, or destinies, no matter under what guise or by what approach the efforts are made. 7, there should be a rigid policy to avoid the development of top-heavy bureaucracy of high-salary executives. The success of the movement is going to depend very heavily on the number of people willing to sacrifice giving some of unpaid, not fully paid service. 8, the highest legislative body will be the House of Delegates, representing the various major areas or states according to membership. The House of Delegates would meet every 5 years, but subject to special session calls by the chairman of the council or leaders acting under council's instructions, for it could be called by the people by a referendum. Okay, so, and then there's every undertaking is to be preceded by study, training, and careful financial planning. There should be long range and short range goals. Some goals can be achieved in a relatively short time. Some of a larger magnitude will require several years, even after the first 5 million membership goal is reached. And still others can, like the eternal pyramids, only have their foundations so solidly laid by this generation that the blacks who follow can continue building on those well-laid foundations at the point where our own labors are ended by time. And something along this line must be the plan. This must be the vision. It is obviously not for the overnight quick pick up and quick down boys. For this black men, women, and their children who seek to find the lost path of their forefathers and start the upward march once again. So this is his plan laid out that we could follow to help build a more organized black group, a black nation within America, without having to move to these 5 states. This is his plan that he's laid out. So, like I say, once again, purchase the book and read the whole book to read every detail of the plan. I just gave you an overview of it, right? So The final great issue then involves the African race alone. The dismissal view from the bridge was reached after a long journey through the centuries. The outlook is distressing because somewhere back down the line of time, the effort to advance toward a higher order of life is something called civilization by ever widening the gap that separates men from the beast. This effort failed. And it failed because in his sudden and amazing success in science and technology, man outsmarted himself, concentrating almost entirely on his mind power at the expense of his humanizing spiritual power, became not the master of his machines, but their servant. And in the process of acquiring seemingly limitless power, this segment of the human race became as soulless as its machines and began to destroy or conquer other people, seizing their lands and their wealth while reducing them as nearly as possible to a state of perpetual dependency. In all this, the Black people of the world still find themselves in the worst situation of all. The question of today now is that what are the Black people themselves going to do? What are we going to do, Black people? What are we going to do, right? The task we now face will test the genius of this Black race. The Blacks in the United States are in the best position as a lead-off example for the rest of the African race. For such a movement will further change the course of history and inspire Black youth everywhere, along with their elders, with a new vision, a sense of direction, and a kind of outlook that gives meaning to study as the source of inventions and new discoveries. The challenge to the Blacks on this continent is to overcome the centuries of their own American version of tribalism and disunity. It is their greatest challenge in this era of perpetual crisis. They will accept it if they have come to understand at last that equal rights and equal justice will never come from appeals to the mighty and granted as an act of grace, but only from their own position of power and influence, which develop from a united people engaged in great and vast undertakings of their own. If we fail to accept this challenge at this critical turning point in our history, we will have proved ourselves unworthy of having any descendants, and our very names should be forgotten by them or cursed by the farthest generation. Get your stuff together or forever be lost to the pages of history and be blown away like dust or ashes, because we will no longer be a people, but we will be just a distant memory of those who were enslaved and never did anything significant about it. So Black people, Chancellor Williams is asking us. He's giving us a plan. He's giving us the history. He's giving us the outline. He showed us how we've gone wrong. So what are we going to do to go right? So that's the last chapter that I've read. So, and after that, it's just to select the bibliography. So make sure you get your copy. Link is in the description. Chancellor Williams' book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. I enjoyed reading this. It went faster than I thought. It's over 400 pages, and it went faster than I thought. We really got into it and got through it and learned a lot about Black people. I learned a lot about Black people. We have to get our stuff together. We have to do better and be better. 6,000 years of history, and we're still making the same mistakes. I give this book 5 thumbs up. I recommend you get your copy. If you don't have your copy already, you tripping. Link is in the description for you to get your copy. Read it, apply it. You probably should read this book. We probably should read this book once a year. In your own life, read this book at least once a year to understand what we have done to ourselves in addition to what our oppressors have done to us. So if we want to build something new, we have to throw off the shackles of yesterday, throw off the shackles of our minds, reprogram ourselves, rebuild ourselves, rework ourselves, and become a powerful people and take back our freedom, our manhood, our womanhood, and our humanity. And that's all I got to say about that. Shout out to Chancellor Williams. So y'all already know what to do. Stay tuned to my post because I'm going to be posting a post sometime soon this week. 4 book choices. And, you know, put in the comments the books you think I should read. But 4 book choices. Make sure that you get to the post and y'all vote for the book that we're going to start reading next. And we're going to go from there. I know, you know, I got some good choices too. And I'm going to make it hard. I'm not going to make it easy. I'm going to make it hard. But I love you all. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. Let's build. Let's build. Let's become the greatest versions of our Black selves. Let's make sure that the individual work will help to uplift the mass, the group work. There's nothing wrong with building ourselves as individuals, but we have to build ourselves as individuals within the framework of the group. Take care of yourself, but overall, the outcome will be better for the group. I'm Joseph Ward. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe, and share. Make sure as many people as possible can see this video. And, you know, catch the next video coming up. Peace out.